Today we're gonna learn how to get this beautiful warm light effect in Lightroom, and yes, finally after a lot of requests, we are doing this, and it's pretty simple. The idea here is basic. You see, we are exaggerating the coldness of the atmosphere and the warmth of the light, and that's pretty much it. And we're gonna achieve that in Lightroom, and then we're gonna move over to Photoshop to give it some finishing touches like the painterly effect. It's gonna be fun, so without any further ado, let's get started. So here we are in Lightroom, and this is the final result. And the best thing about Lightroom is that there's nothing complex. Just as Photoshop, you have levels, curves, and a lot of effects that you can apply, filters. It's just the sliders and the adjustment layers and the local adjustment tools, and that's pretty much it. And that's the speciality, and you can use all of that to achieve whatever look you like. Of course, for the things you cannot do in Lightroom, you have to move over to Photoshop. So this is something I have saved as a snapshot. Now, snapshot allow you to record your settings and create different versions of it. Okay, so let me reset that quickly. Just let me reset it. To click on reset, just click on reset to reset it. And it's pretty much simple. If I select any of the versions, now this is the original version. And by the way, this photo was submitted by Cleoniki. She is really an awesome photographer. You gotta check out her work. Really good stuff in her Instagram handle. Check out her work right here. Now, everything is reset. Now, if I click on version 1, it will revive the settings that I had saved as a snapshot. Now, suppose you reset it. Let me just explain snapshots for a second. Suppose you worked on the highlights and shadows and did whatever you want, and you like this version. You want to save it. Okay? Simple. Click on the plus button, name it whatever you like, maybe version 3, and create. And the best part about snapshot is you can create different versions under the same image. Okay, so everything is saved. This is version 2. I created this before. This is version 1. Okay, now let's reset it. Start afresh. Click on reset, or you're just starting out the image. It's already reset. Now, what's the first thing to do? A lot of people, including me, when it comes to Lightroom, will suggest you a workflow. Okay, depending upon the kind of image you're working on. Things like first set the white balance, then set the white point at the black point, and then set the exposure. But here's the thing. When we are trying to achieve a particular kind of effect, achieve the effect first and then work on the adjustments to enhance the effect. Instead of working on the small adjustments and getting to the large effect, do the effect first, achieve the effect first, on a rough basis, roughly, and then work on the small adjustments. Here's why. Because if you're working on the small adjustments, even sometimes the most professional Lightroom users don't know exactly where they're going. So achieve the big effect first and then work on the small settings. So in this, our intention was very simple: to exaggerate the coldness of the atmosphere and the warmth of the light. Now, the warmth of the light can be exaggerated by using local adjustments, and in this case, we're going to use the adjustment brush. So first, let's globally apply the coldness. To apply the coldness, simple, decrease the temperature in the white balance. Let's decrease it to say 26, 30-ish. 26 is fine. Now, if you want to add a tint of magenta, you can, but I guess it's okay the way it is. Just double click on the word to reset that, or double click on this to reset that. Pretty much does the same thing in Lightroom. Now, we want to bring out the warmth of this. Let's do it first. Instead of touching any of that before, if you're achieving an effect, if you're working on an effect, do that first. Select the brush. The shortcut is K. Okay, adjustment brush. Select that, and then make sure new is checked, and then double click on effects to bring everything to 0. If that was something off, if it was something like that, just double click on effect to bring everything to 0. Now make sure the flow is 100, feather is 100, and then you can increase the brush size by scrolling the mouse. If you're using the mouse, just scroll it to make it bigger or smaller. Okay, now just dab once here. Okay, dab once. Done. Now let's increase the temperature, giving it a warmth. Wow, it looks awesome, doesn't it? Now you can just click here, depending upon the size of the light, decrease the size of the brush or increase it. So this is a small light. Click once. This is a small light. Click on each and every light you come across. So this one looks great. This one, each and every yellow light. Okay, now we are pretty much done. Now it's time for us to do the adjustments. Let's come to the basic panel, just click on it again and bring up the normal one, panels. Alright, first things first, exposure, okay? And before that, you can also set the white and the black point. And there's a shortcut to do that automatically. Hold the shift key and double click on the white. It automatically sets the white point, and hold the shift and double click on the blacks. It automatically sets the black point. Now what's actually doing is this, okay? Let me just reset that. If you hold the Alt key and Alt or Option if you're using a Mac, and it will show you the area that is already very highlighted, and decrease it. So it's highlighted. There are no detail in that area. Now, same with the blacks. If you hold the Alt key and you take it down, and once it begins to show the artifacts, which means that in those areas, it's so black that you're losing the details. Alright, so in this case, let's set the highlights right now. Okay, set it to this one. Now let's reset the whites again. Okay, it's -100, that's pretty good. Let's increase it, I guess. It's time to be a little artistic, less technical. Whites, this much is fine. Black, we can reset that, that's working fine. And we don't mind losing details in this area because it's light, that's okay. Shadows, let's increase the shadows a little bit and brighten up the hairs. Why? Because we're gonna add a vignette here and we're gonna darken it later. So let's brighten up the shadows, and we can always switch back and forth. There's no hard and fast rule that once you have set it, you have to set it back again. Now, if you want to increase the vibrance, you can increase it a little bit, maybe 20%, that's pretty much good, or maybe 25. Alright, now it's time for us to give the shadows a matte effect or the faded effect. Very simple, let's come down to the tone curve and simple. We are in the blue channel right now. If your tone curve doesn't look like this, it's probably looking just like this, okay? Click on this one, it will look like this. This is the manual curve, okay? You can do anything you like here instead of the sliders one. So let's choose RGB and let's brighten up the shadows a bit, just like this, okay? That looks great. Now, I want to lose details in the shadows and make it darker, but still want to have it bright. So here's what I will do. Just click and drag it in the same level to the right, okay? Now what we are actually doing is that, let's understand it this way, okay? If I drag it all the way to the right, keeping it to the bottom, what we are doing is that we are losing details in the shadows by making the dark pixels more darker. Now if we make the dark pixels darker, eventually it will go so dark that it will lose details. So we are making the dark pixels darker and we are losing the details, and then we are adding some brightness to those areas. We have already lost the details, okay? Now we are adding flat brightness by moving it up, and that's exactly what we are doing. So to add a matte effect, here's the key. Just take this point along this diagonal and you'll be good, okay? So this is fine, that looks great, and that's the reason why we brightened the shadows. We brightened the shadows because we didn't want the hair to be black, okay? So now if you take it down, see it's going black. You want to increase it a bit, just like that, so that looks good. Maybe decrease it a bit. Okay, that looks fine. Now maybe you want to add a little blue to the shadows. So let's choose blue and let's drag it a little up, just like that. Oh, just a little bit, not too much. Okay, that's working fine. Now let's add some sharpness. So let's increase the sharpness, the amount, or 80% works for me. Now let's fill it, or let's go 1:1 so that you can see what exactly the sharpening is doing. Now you can play with the radius, hold the alter option, and then increase and decrease the radius to see which value works for you. Because you don't want the radius to be so high that it begins to show the halo effect around the edges. Or you don't want it to be so low that it just exaggerates the noise. So you want to find a good mid ground for it. So I guess for this image, it's going to be 1.2, something like that. That's pretty much great. And for some images, 1 or 0.8 also works fine. Now, that's Great. You don't want to apply noise reduction right now because we're going to apply the painterly effect later in Photoshop. Once you sharpen in Lightroom, it also sharpens the areas which you didn't want to sharpen. For example, this area which is completely out of focus, you didn't want to sharpen it. Okay, so for that you can use this amazing tool here called masking. Now just hold the alter option. Let me go fill, hold the alter option and increase it. Now as you increase it, it focuses on the areas which have more details like the edges, the texture, so on and so forth. Now the more the value, the more focused the sharpness will be. Now white are the areas in which the sharpness is being applied. Okay, just those areas. So we would go somewhere like this, and black are the areas where no sharpness is being applied. So this is fine. Now it's sharpening only the areas which is required to sharpen. Okay, now once we have applied the sharpness, you can go ahead and apply some vignetting. Now here's the tip for vignetting. Take the amount all the way to -100 and take the feather all the way to 0. Now you can easily adjust the midpoint. So adjust the midpoint, adjust the roundness, how round you want it to be. If you want it to be like that, for me this one works, and adjust the midpoint, this one works. And now increase the feather, how much soft you want and how low you want the vignette to be, how transparent you want the vignette to be. So this value works great for me. That's pretty much great. Now, what if you want more details in the face? Let's add some clarity locally. So take the brush. It's all about making small adjustments after achieving the big effect to enhance the effect. Okay, let's take the brush, make sure new is checked, and then just dab once here around the face. Let's paint like this. And to see which areas you have masked, press O. Okay, O for orange. See the red areas that you have masked, press O again. And by the way, you can press H for hat to hide this anchor point right there. Okay, or whatever that is called, point. Now, let's increase the clarity just a little bit. There we go. That looks great. And yep, it's pretty much done. You can try dehaze. Let's increase the dehaze a bit. Just a hair. There we go. And have a look. So this is the before, this is the after. Now it's totally upon you. You can go as much in depth as you want. You can play with the graduated filter, with a hue, saturation, luminance. For example, you can take the graduated filter, maybe add a yellow tint up here or down here, just like that. If there was light, so imagining if there was light here, you can add a little bit of yellow tint right there. You can do that. Well, you can increase the exposure a little bit down here to give it a fake light effect there. And you can also use things like hue, saturation, lightness. Just click here, come to the hue, saturation, lightness tab and play with the luminance and stuff. Let's come to the luminance and darken up the blues a bit, just a bit. And you can darken up reds, brighten it up, do whatever you like. I'm going to darken it up just a little bit. And you can play with it. You get the idea. You can play with the saturation and the luminance of each color. And now once you're ready, once you're satisfied with the result, you can move to Photoshop. How to move to Photoshop? Well, simple. Right click on it, edit in Adobe Photoshop CC 2017. Now before we do that, click on the plus button and let's save it version 4. So in case you reset that, it's already there inside of the image. Now let's check my first version and compare it. So this was my first version. This is my third version, fourth version, I guess. So yeah, you can also go ahead and decrease the exposure if you want. Just like that. And maybe come to that brush, select the brush, press H to hide and press H again to show. And let's come to this and maybe increase the exposure a little bit of this area. Okay, so you can make teeny tiny adjustments again and decrease the midpoint of the vignette. There we go, post-crop vignette, decrease the midpoint a bit to make it more interesting. And let's move over to Photoshop. Now, once you have made changes and you want to save these changes to this particular snapshot, which is version 4, right click on it and update with current settings. Very simple, pretty easy, right? Next, just right click on it and go to edit in Adobe Photoshop. CC 2017 or whatever version you're using. Now, it will show up an option, edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments, edit a copy, edit original. Now, if you want to keep the Lightroom adjustments, which we of course want, we can choose this, okay? Or you can choose edit a copy of the original file. This will not have the Lightroom adjustments. So make sure edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments is checked. Now, this is the previous one. The new one will just load up. I was just practicing before the tutorial. It's necessary, even I research and practice. I'm a human after all. Let it load. Okay, there we go. Let's go ahead and close this. And there we go. Now, by looking at it, I think we should have increased the highlights in the should have increased the shadows. If we go over it, and let's go, if we increase the shadows a bit, just like that. Now that looks nice. Now let's open this in Photoshop. Okay. Edit. There we go. So these adjustments matter. Sometimes you're gonna have to go back and forth. And one of the tips here is this. If you're looking at an image for more than like 15-30 minutes, it looks good to you, it looks nice to you. But go and have a cup of coffee and come back after a while, you will begin to see the mistakes or the things which you can improve in the same image. Let's go ahead and close the previous one. We don't want it. We can delete it later from Lightroom. Now, let's add a painterly effect. It's very, very simple. Make a copy of the background layer. Always keep the background layer intact. You don't want to touch that. Controller Command J. Okay. Now, before you apply any filter, let's convert this into 8-bit. Okay. Image, mode, 8-bit. Okay. Many other filters do not apply on 16-bit images. Now, let's convert this into a smart object. Okay. Filter, convert for smart filters, so that we can always go back if we want, and we can always change the values of any filter or adjustment that we apply. Make another copy of it and turn this copy off, the top one off. Let's come back to layer 1. Now, this might sound strange. Let's go to filter, noise, reduce noise. Okay, let's click on that, and we're going to do this 4 or 5 times. Keep the strength to 10 and everything to 0. Make sure in the basic, click OK. And this is why I asked you not to reduce noise in Lightroom, because anyway, we're going to apply the painterly effect. Now, it's softer, smoother. We're going to apply that again. Filter, reduce noise. The same settings, just click on the top one, or you can again go to reduce noise and keep all those settings, but it shows up at the top, the last filter that you applied. So it's again asking for values. Click OK, because it's a smart object. It's softer now. Now let's apply it again 3 or 4 times minimum if it's a high resolution image. This is a high resolution image. So again, filter, reduce noise. So at least 3 or 4 times. So 3 times we have applied. Let's apply one last time, and you can apply 5 times, 6 times, whatever you want. See how smooth this is? How nice this looks? Now it's time for us to apply the sharpness. Let it apply the filter. And once it does, it has applied it. Let's turn this on. Okay. And then filter, you know what to do for sharpness, other, high pass, and you can decrease the radius all the way to 0.1 and increase it gradually, and just when you begin to see the edges, stop. Edges of the nose and so forth, and just stop around 2 is okay, and click OK. Then change the blend mode of this one to overlay, and you have added the details. If you want more details, make another copy of this and more details. So this way you can create the painterly effect, really nice painterly effect. And let's make a group of both of these. It's kind of looking messy. So select both of these, hold the controller command and click on the other one, and click on all the 3 and press controller command G. This way we make a group of both of these, all the 3 of these, by the way. Now you can apply a lot of color effects here. So for this, let's apply some color lookup tables. Click on this one and choose color lookup, and you can choose any one you like. So teal orange, that looks great. And if you think it's too much, you can always go ahead and decrease the opacity. Now let me show you. Wow, this looks amazing. Have a look. Before, after, this really looks amazing. This Kodak one. So you can try in different ones. And I'll show you a tip, which is interesting. Okay, so this is also looking great. Now, let me show you a tip. For example, you selected anyone like, say, night from day. That looks great. Makes it completely night. But we want to revive the brightness of the light. How about adding a mask? So adjustment layers come with a mask, you don't have to add a mask. Let's select the mask. And what's the concept of mask? Black are the areas which is not shown, white are the areas which show up. So select the mask. We don't want the effect to be applied in this light area. So what we would do, we would take the brush, make sure the foreground color is black. If it's not black, press X to toggle between the foreground and the background, and press D to reset the swatches if it's some other color other than black and white. So it's black. Let's make the brush a little bigger. How to make it bigger? Hold the Alter option, the right mouse button, drag it to the right to make it bigger, drag it to the left to make it smaller, and click once on this light with black. Wow, look at it. And do the same as you did in Lightroom. Isn't this amazing? Now you can click a big one here to just mimic that the light was coming from the bottom. Just wow, this looks, and you can click once or twice here with decreased flow, maybe 20-ish, and you can click once here, maybe some random lights were coming here and there, and you can do stuff like that. And also you can also use blend modes with it. Suppose just select this icon and choose maybe say late sunset. This looks strange, but here's the thing, why not try it with blend modes? So you can choose a blend mode like soft light and look at it, have a look before or after. You can of course go ahead and decrease the opacity, and that looks interesting. So that's how to get the beautiful warm light effect in Lightroom and then finishing up it in Photoshop. See, the idea is very simple, exaggerating the coldness of the atmosphere and the warmth of the light. And here's the thing, whenever you're looking for an effect in Lightroom, whenever you're planning for achieving a particular effect that you have in mind, please achieve the big effect first and then work on the small adjustments to enhance the particular effect that you have in mind. Because if you work first in the small adjustments, what's going to happen is that we won't know where those small adjustments are leading us to. And then you can move over to Photoshop to apply some effects, and there are a ton of tutorials on the playlists you can find in this channel on achieving particular kinds of effects, especially for portraits. So check out this playlist right here. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, make sure to give us a like, and also don't forget to subscribe, and not just subscribe, ring the bell so that you, my friend, don't miss a thing. I'll see you guys in my next one. Till then, stay tuned and make sure that you keep creating.